Once again, Airbnb is releasing new changes and they are underwhelming. Let's go ahead and talk about all of these changes and how they may or may not impact your business at all, or if you're a guest, how they may impact your experience. Make sure to comment on this video because I want to hear what you think of the changes, and make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're just joining this channel for the first time, my name is Kyle Stanley and I have 70 short-term rentals, most of which I do not own. And I've been doing Airbnb since 2015 when I started it as a roommate at my house and started doing it as a full-time business at the end of 2019. You can learn more about my story by just checking out this YouTube channel, but of course, that's not the point of this video. I want to get to all these changes that Airbnb has made. So Airbnb has gotten into the habit of right around twice a year, typically in the spring and the winter, making these changes, hyping them up, and then releasing them, and essentially, it's not a huge deal. That was no different today, but I will tell you that there are some things that are worth noting and will majorly impact your business or your experience as a guest, and some things that just don't mean much. What was surprising to me about this release is that there were 4 things that Brian Chesky talked about on Twitter, and they were not even mentioned in this winter release. The first one that he mentioned on his Twitter page was price controls for guests. So guests will have the option to essentially see the overall price rather than just the nightly price. The second part was prioritizing the overall price rather than just the nightly price in the algorithm for hosts. The third was new pricing discount tools for hosts to help them give more discounts in more creative ways. And the last one is the checkout rules are being simplified for guests so that they don't have to go and do ridiculous things like start laundry or vacuum. So if and when those changes do happen, we will go ahead and release more information about that. Now let's get to the changes that actually did happen in the winter 2022 release. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and break down the facts of each one of these changes and then my thoughts. First, and likely most controversial of all this, is Airbnb AirCover.
To start, you said you wanted even more protections when you host. So we're giving you even more AirCover. AirCover now includes protections for cars and boats parked at your home, plus expanded coverage for art and valuables. And we're increasing damage protection from $1 million to $3 million.
A little bit of background for those of you that don't know, Airbnb AirCover used to be called the Airbnb Host Guarantee, and they guaranteed you up to $1 million of liability and damage protection. Now, this Airbnb Host Guarantee used to be legit, and it used to be a real thing that they would actually put their money where their mouth is. But then this thing called COVID happened, and Airbnb just started reimbursing people and taking the guest side on just about every situation. And this Airbnb host guarantee became harder and harder to actually claim. So for example, if I had a guest that broke a chair or broke a table, typically in the past, I'd be able to just submit a picture of that photo along with a link showing how much it costs, and Airbnb within a few days would reimburse me. But suddenly after COVID and a bunch of layoffs, it seemed like it was just a lot more difficult and a lot more cumbersome to get these things paid out. But then in 2021, Airbnb came out with a bunch of new changes, and they promised that AirCover was the new and improved version of the Airbnb host guarantee, which it wasn't. At the time, they promised that claims would be easier to file, that money would be paid out faster, and that superhosts would get special treatment in this process. I can tell you this, I had one claim over $3,000. It took Airbnb over 90 days to pay me out, along with the fact that we had to make phone call after phone call after phone call after text message after direct message after everything. They finally paid us out, but most of the time they were hitting that reject button without any reason. So here's the deal. If you are relying on AirCover, you are in trouble. So have a really good pre-screening process. And make sure to use something like Safely instead of AirCover. I love Safely because it's protecting each one of my reservations. You can get a link to Safely down below to get started, or you can get a discount to Safely as being an exclusive member of our 6-figure formula. All you have to do is go to fearlesskyle.com/6FF to learn more about that membership today. Next up is Airbnb Setup. And this is something I actually really do like. For one major reason, it's helping new hosts to get the support that they need. One of the biggest issues in short-term rentals, and one of the biggest reasons we have a bad rap, is because new hosts have no freaking clue what they're doing. And they have to learn along the way. And guess what? I used to be a new host, and I had a ton of terrible situations. I once got a call from a neighbor when I first started off saying, hey, your property management company sucks. You should fire them. And I had to tell him, this is embarrassing, but that's me. And why? Because it's one of those things that it's new. You're going to suck at it in the beginning. So Airbnb setup is giving you, the new host, a connection with a current super host, and you can actually learn from them so that you can be a better host and you can get your property set up properly. Now, that's one of the reasons I like this, but one of the reasons I'm actually seeing as I do a little bit more thinking about it is that this is a money-making ploy for Airbnb. And how do I know that? Well, with a recent article from TechCrunch, you can see that Brian Chesky says today, just like during the Great Recession of 2008, people are especially interested in earning extra income through hosting, which is great. But what that essentially means is that Brian Chesky just wants a ton of new hosts because he wants to be able to create a lot more listings, which honestly is great for Airbnb and could potentially be great for guests. I don't know, might create a little bit more overwhelm for guests. But to me, this is one of the major issues with Airbnb is that there's so many new hosts that a lot of areas are starting to see drops in bookings because new hosts don't really know how to host. So they make a couple bucks, but they end up being really let down because they don't know how to optimize their listing. And that's something that needs to be taught. It's not just setting up the listing, it's optimizing it as well. And this is unfortunately one of those things that Airbnb has continued to do. They ask the guests what they want, but they don't really ask hosts what they want. I understand that Airbnb's number one client is the guest, and so we have to appeal to the guests. But not only are the guests important, but the hosts are important as well. Yes, are they number two in line? I do think so, but isn't it still important to ask the hosts what they want and what's going to be helpful for them? This is just another example of Airbnb going to the guests only rather than the hosts. I think for this reason, a lot of hosts will continue to start using things like VRBO and Booking.com and other things like Furnish Finders to go get more bookings, and they'll slowly stop relying on Airbnb as much. So it's kind of the quantity over quality thing is what I'm seeing from Airbnb with this move. The next change that was announced is the guest screening. So in the past, you've probably seen it on a profile. It says guest identity verified, and this has been hit or miss. Now Airbnb is saying they're making a big push for all identities to be verified by the spring of 2023, which would be great and great peace of mind for us hosts. The other part of guest screening is that they'll actually do reservation screening as well.
So we built reservation screening technology. Now this technology looks at hundreds of factors to block bookings that might lead to unauthorized parties. We're launching in the US and Canada, and we are expanding worldwide in the spring.
So if Airbnb sees a guest that could potentially throw a party, then they're going to just block it right from the get-go. Now that sounds great, but here's my experience. I've actually had Airbnb block guests that we're not trying to throw parties. I have a good pre-screening process. I know when a guest is throwing up red flags. I've literally gotten on the phone with guests and asked them, what are you doing? What are you looking to do at my property? And I can know that they're not trying to throw a party, and I still can't accept that guest. So I don't like Airbnb making this decision for me. I do like that it's probably going to help a lot of other hosts who don't know what red flags to look for. But me personally, because I have a good pre-screening process with my team, I feel like this might end up hurting us more than helping, but only time will tell. Hey, here's a completely useless new change, and that is the new categories. So there's 6 new categories. 1 is new, 2, top of the world, 3, trending, 4, adapted, which is for wheelchair accessible, 5, play, and 6 is Hanex, which is some sort of Korean type of style of house. Now, this is something that for guests could be very useful, especially that 4th change with the adapted, the wheelchair accessible. I can see that absolutely for you guests that need that. That is something that is nice to be able to filter through in your area. But all the other ones for hosts, it's just, for me, I haven't seen the return on that investment. Airbnb, of course, came out with all these categories back in May of 2022. A lot of people started to see some of their bookings start to be affected. And especially if you aren't a unique property, it seemed like those categories were the ones that were being improved. But if you just have a basic 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom house with not much going on, then you started to probably even see a little bit of a dip in bookings. So for that reason, Airbnb has encouraged us to be unique and different, which of course that's something that you should be doing and changing in your business. But these new categories, once again, just don't really excite me. The only one that does excite me is the new, because if you don't already know this, but Airbnb's algorithm is actually going to improve your rankings if you're a new host or if it's a new listing. This is just one more level of that. So if they're already improving that in the algorithm, plus they're putting that as a category, then one might think that this could even improve more new listings. So no matter if you're a experienced superhost or a new host, this new category might help your new listing. And once again, we'll have to see how that works. Another change that doesn't really excite me, but hey, some of you want to get paid faster, and I get that. So Airbnb has released Fast Pay, which is giving you, the host, the opportunity to get paid within 30 minutes of a reservation starting rather than waiting for the next business day. So if that's something that you're excited about, go ahead and start using Fast Pay, and you can get that sent to your debit card. Me personally, I like getting paid the next day. I already think that Airbnb pays out very quick. And this last one, which could be a major improvement for hosts, but we have to see if the action meets the words on this, is retaliatory reviews. So this is one of the biggest issues in Airbnb, which once again, pre-COVID versus post-COVID. Pre-COVID, it used to be super simple to get a review removed. If a guest was being unreasonable, you could call Airbnb, they could get it removed. Now, post-COVID, everything has become so much more difficult. Even if that guest is completely abolishing that review policy, there have been Airbnb customer support reps that have just said, yeah, we're not removing it. And we're like, wait, what? What do you mean? It's absolutely against the policy. How can you not remove it? Sorry, we've closed this case. What? This has really been a typical situation with Airbnb customer service, and unfortunately, we've just seen it get worse and worse. So this new change is saying that you will get more opportunities to remove reviews if they don't make sense for your listing. Here are the 3 major changes that I saw while looking at the review policy. Number 1, reviews may not be provided or withheld in exchange for something of value like a discount, refund, reciprocal review, or promise not to take negative action against the reviewer. They also may not be used as an attempt to mislead or deceive Airbnb or another person. For example, guests should not write biased or inauthentic reviews as a form of retaliation against a host who enforces a policy or rule. So I love this. In the past, if a person threw a party and then we called them out for throwing a party and we tried to get them to pay a fine or to leave, then Airbnb would say, well, they still are in their right to leave a review. Like, what? If they are throwing a party or breaking a rule or smoking in the house, right? Like, that should not be excused. And so for this new policy, according to what they're saying, if a guest breaks a house rule, they're not allowed to leave a review. And if they do, it can be removed. And of course, the first part of that is essentially extortion. Hey, I'll give you a great review if you give me a refund on this night, or vice versa. Hey, if you stay with me again, I'll give you a great review. It's exchanging something in replacement of some sort of value, whether it's the host or the guest. That's not okay. That's extortion. There are ways to reword this that make it a little bit more encouraging, and we're not going to talk about that right now, but there are some tricks that we use in our profile that do help us to be able to get better reviews without having to extort guests. And once again, this is something that we teach in our 6-figure formula. You can go ahead and click on the link in the description to check that out. The next review policy that was added is reviews may only be provided in connection with a genuine stay or experience. For example, hosts are not allowed to accept a fake reservation in exchange for a positive review, use a second account to leave themselves a review, or coordinate with others to manipulate the review system. So this is a new hack that a lot of new hosts were doing because they were worried they weren't going to get any bookings. So they would make a second profile, they'd book their listing, and they'd leave a review. And did that help the algorithm? Yeah, it did. But guys, it's so easy to get bookings when you're brand new. So just avoid doing that. It doesn't make any sense for you or for your profile. Plus, Airbnb will go ahead and remove those and probably ban your profile if you do something like that. And lastly, if a guest never arrived for their stay or experience or had to cancel due to circumstances unrelated to their stay or experience, their review may be removed. So believe it or not, this is something that has happened to a lot of hosts, including myself, a number of times. And you may not have experienced yet, but believe me, you're going to, where a guest will literally book, they don't show up, and then they leave a negative review. And you tell Airbnb, hey, this person never even showed up. And Airbnb says, sorry, they're entitled to a review. Again, like what? How are they entitled to a review if they didn't actually stay there? So now, if you can prove that the guest didn't stay there, it can be removed. Okay, I want to hear your thoughts on these changes. Whether you're a host or a guest, I want to hear what you think about it. And maybe if you think that there are things that will impact your business more than I do, I would really like to know that too. And make sure you're subscribed to the Fearless Investor channel, and we will keep on releasing great information about the short-term rental industry and how you can go out and conquer Airbnb.